Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Magic Mics, proudly sponsored by CoolStuffing.com, mana traders, as well as Twitch subs and Patreon supporters just like you. My name is Evan Irwin, and get started each week by saying hello to my two co-hosts, Power Dragon.
What's up, everybody? I'm riding high today because I got to make Twitter happy, and that's a rarity.
You did. That was kind of incredible. Ruben Wrestler.
That's a difficult task these days, so well done. Hi everybody, how's it going?
Yeah, you don't want to be the main character on Twitter, but if you want to bring joy through Twitter, that's okay.
I mean, there's a world where you can be the main character and be happy about it, I guess.
Okay, well, let me know when you find those people. Either way, if you missed our pre-show, patrons and subs to this channel get access to our extended version early. We kick it off with our first pick and our code push to CoolStuffInc.com. Check them out. Use promo code MagicMics to save 5% off anything in the store. Single, sealed supplies, whatever you want. It doesn't even have to be Magic. It's whatever you want. Anything on CoolStuffInc.com. Try a new game. Get some supplies for it. Check it out. Use the promo code MagicMics and support your favorite streamer with your suggestions into the show to see who we raid tonight. Thanks to our sponsor, CoolStuffInc.com. All right. We're going to kick it off here with our Ban and Restricted update. Our first pick for the week is that they have decided to do very little changes, but a few big ones. A few changes that did impact a lot. First of all, let's note the no changes. Nothing changed in Standard.
And I think that's correct, honestly. Standard is probably as good as it's been in probably since 2016-ish, 2017.
Wow.
It's been a minute.
Dude, Standard's really good right now. Like, there's a whole variety of decks you can play. Even Shieldred being really expensive doesn't show up in all that many decks when you go out and play in the world. So it's cool.
Yeah, Standard's pretty fun. No changes in Pioneer. A lot of people thought they might ban something in Pioneer. No changes in Legacy.
That one was the most surprising to me. I would have thought that Grief would have gotten the axe in Legacy. I mean, we'll see. That one's still going to be on the chopping block for a while, but I think that no changes in Legacy is a passable one, but it is the most surprising of the formats overall, in my opinion.
Yeah, and from the chat, they note that there's still only 3 decks mainly or whatever for Standard. What I would say is something has to be the best. There has to be there has to be tier 1, and then there's tier 2, and then there's like tier 2.5 or whatever you want to call it. But like,
I think there's a lot more than that when you look at the top 8s of these different things. Hell, we just had a tournament, the biggest tournament of the year, get won by a crazy multi-land combo.
I was just gonna say that the most recent Standard top 8 does not. The most recent big events do not bear out that there are 3 decks.
Right. I would know that there's more than enough options to keep
looking
it
at. I mean, this is the first thing I clicked from last weekend. Esper Rafine, Bant Toxic, 4-color Legends, Azorius Tempo, 5-color Control, Dimir Aggro, all made top 8. So there's 5, and then there's Boros Convoke just outside the top 8.
Honestly, for as much as Domain Control has even played, which is still out there, I don't even remember the last major or big event that it even won. It hasn't, if you look at the results, I don't think.
Right, and I think the LCI and MKM, particularly LCI, I think changed a lot of the landscape in terms of what you could do, deck ideas, things that come out of left field. The weird Sultai thing came out of nowhere. Like, for me, when stuff like the weird Sultai deck comes out and wins the 75K or whatever, that just means that the format is nowhere near mined to the point where you found everything. You know what I mean? And I think there's multiple times where formats come and go, and some of the coolest, weirdest, most winning decks possible are never found. Like, I believe that. We just didn't. Even with all the people looking at it, and all the people trying, and all the people, thousands of people playing, sometimes you miss it. Like, there wasn't, what was it? Was it Death Shadow? The Death Shadow deck in Legacy?
Yep.
That took a long time to come around.
Because they made, like, what, a Legacy GP or Legacy PT or something weird they did in Worlds? Something like they did it with it. Yeah, and so it took the pros, focusing on that format to find a deck no one was even playing or looking at. So, like, that, to me, there's a lot of innovation available out there. So, anyway, let's bring it up here on the first pick. And they have banned Violent Outburst from Modern. The only way to instant speed Cascade has been removed from the format.
And that makes a lot of sense. Even in preparing for commentary and different things to note for this weekend. Oh, speaking of, Hunter Burt Memorial Open. If you're going to be around this weekend, you should come say hi. I'll be down in the Dallas area.
Hell yeah.
But, everybody was asking about that deck, right? It was is Rhino still going to be the thing? Or are we worried about something getting banned or whatever? Like, and if everybody's worried about it and talking about it, like, it makes sense that that's the deck you need to take a card out of. It's still playable, but definitely severely weakened by this card being out of it.
Yeah. You can still play Living End if you really want to. Violent Outburst obviously being the best of the options, but you still have Shardless Agent, you still have Ardent Plea, still have Demonic Dread, I guess.
Yeah.
If you want that one as well. So you still have 12 options. The mana is going to be weird, but Violent Outburst being instant speed, Violent Outburst being green was a big deal. So, I think that it was a pretty obvious choice. And it's a common, so it's not hurting people's bank accounts to get rid of. The unfortunate thing is, yes, we do have the Three Kitties art, which is great.
The $40 card.
We did just come out with Violent Outburst with the Three Kitties on it. So that is unfortunate. That is the one sad part.
It's a little sad, but you got to do what you got to do, and sometimes you have to rip off the Band-Aid even when there's Three Kitties on it. And Ponder is unrestricted in Vintage, and I thought that was an interesting kind of take. It's been restricted since 2008.
Mm-hmm.
That's a long time.
I was literally about to say I don't remember a time where it wasn't restricted.
Right.
And 2008 sounds about right.
People could have been born.
Feels like the life of the card.
Right. They could have been born when it was restricted, and they can now drive a car. Like that's right. That's how long it's been.
I think that this speaks a lot to how much the traditional blue, like mid-range strategies are suffering, and also some of the blue combo strategies. Traditionally, decks like just a blue-white control deck would be better, and also you kind of want to upgrade Storm and those kinds of things a little bit too. But right now, we've got Paradoxical Outcome, which is a huge part of the metagame, and Hate Bears, which is a huge part of the metagame. And so Ponder coming back is not really going to go in either of those decks. I guess maybe it would go in Paradoxical Outcome, but it's not going to, the amount of Paradoxical Outcome that Ponder improves is not going to be a ton.
There's also a lot of cards that have just come out since Ponder that are kind of in that space. Some of them are instant speed, some surveil or whatever. So like, how powerful is it compared to it being one of the only like 2 or 3 real options that did something like that when it released? It's kind of a bit different too. So I know admittedly I haven't been playing a lot of Vintage lately, so I couldn't tell you, but I think this is probably a safe space where you can go ahead and experiment, see if it really impacts anything or not. And it probably won't be that bad, I would think.
Yeah, it's not a format I know a lot about. It's a format I am like fascinated by. You know what I mean? Like it's one of those where it's so wild and crazy on the power level. It's sort of also one of those formats that a lot of people can just sort of dismiss and be like, well, it's just a turn 2 format. It's like, well, this is the same thing if you play Timeless.
Vintage has almost never been a turn 2 format.
And it almost never has, yeah. And if you play Timeless on Arena, you'll also see that while you can say is a turn 2 format, it is absolutely not a turn 2 format. But, again, I think part of it is that, like, Wizards has probably been a little too conservative when it comes to restricting and banning cards, in my opinion. And then I think I've seen, at least sort of recently, where they loosened the belt a little bit, and now we can play Smuggler's Copter and Explorer and whatnot and stuff like that, where, that card was way too good when it showed up, and that was years ago, and Fire Design has happened, and we've pushed things, and just like when they finally unbanned Jace or whatever, nothing happened. And you're like, wait a minute, that was supposed to run everything and ruin all the things. It's like, well, it's just not what it used to be.
Yeah, sometimes it's also the nature of the environment and the metagame that existed when it was banned, right? Like once all the decks shift, it's like, okay, well now you unlock this thing, it's just a card,
Right, what we're trying to say is that unban Splinter Twin. Do it already. Stop it.
You're I'm not saying all that.
This is not okay. Unban Splinter Twin.
Listen,
do it.
We'll get more clicks if we say it.
That's right.
But
we will.
Yeah, I'm
sure,
not
man.
on that boat yet. Sorry.
I think it's fine. They've made lots of removals since then. I just want to
They
note.
did. They have made
So
lots of
much.
removals since then.
Very powerful. All right. Let's move out of here, out of the first pick in through Gather the Townsfolk. As we say, in memoriam to Magic Spellslingers. Magic Spellslingers was a mobile version of Magic that had sort of very Hearthstone-esque rules in that you could only have so many creatures / characters on the board, and very quick games that happen, pretty quickly. I don't think, care too much about like colors of mana per se versus just like you get an extra mana. Very Hearthstone-y, very Marvel Snappish as it were. But ultimately, no longer going to be service, I think, after March 6th. All in-app cash purchases are going to be turned off, and as of June 4th, it will be gone. GG.
Yeah, I believe also, and I need to go double check, but I think there was a deal that if you had played Spellslingers and you had linked your account to your Wizards account or something, like you get some number of experience and some other things in Arena, which is also kind of cool.
Okay.
So, and I think that goes until the end of March. I think after March, 24th, I think was the date, you log in and you can get your rewards.
It's for only available to players who first played Spellslingers before March 6th, aka before the announcement.
Yeah.
But if you played before then you can link your account and get 1,500 gems in Arena, which is cool. Free stuff is also great, and they didn't have to do that, by the way, which is also nice. And that's the whole thing. I think we touched a little bit on it maybe last week about the fact that they are going to have a venture into the dungeon Battle for Baldur's Gate special thing they're going to be doing, which is kind of rad. That's going to have an 8.5 by 11 super dungeon, which is also super cool.
Yeah, which is kind of crazy.
And all of the stuff that's on it matches the game. So when you play through Baldur's Gate and then you look at the dungeon, you'll be like, oh, look at that. The Emerald Grove is there. Nice. How cool is that? Like that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, you got the Goblin Camp. That was a thing. Emerald Grove, Auntie's Tea House. We went down to Auntie's Tea House.
Yep.
The Mountain Pass and whatnot.
And then the rest of it's going to be spoilers.
The rest is I don't want to ruin anything. So
the further you get into that card, you're going to be like, I wonder what that location is. Anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
And we're talking about this because every Tuesday, if we're not doing a top 10, we show live gameplay of Baldur's Gate.
Right.
We're up to part 17 or something now, 18.
Something like that. We're about 30 hours in, 35 hours into the game.
Something like that. We record every.
We are about to get into Act 2.
Well, we're in Act 2, aren't we?
No, we're not in Act 2 yet.
Really? Oh, well.
We're not in Act 2 yet.
Shows what I know.
We are about 4/5 of the way through Act 1.
Wow.
We've got most of Act 1 done. Having played through it a couple times now. We've got a little bit more to go. We could go straight to Act 2 if we wanted to, but we've got this whole extra building to explore. So,
well, they asked someone asked Mark Rosewater on Blogatog, is it going to enter the comprehensive rules and Commander Legacy Vintage? But he says it's just for the event. But if people want to enjoy it casually, obviously go completely nuts.
Yeah, go for it.
And this
would say if you have a Baldur's Gate commander and or like commander plus background.
Oh yeah.
As your commander, you should 100% use this as a dungeon.
Yep. And
if you don't, you're going to need a good reason to use it.
Right. And as I think we mentioned, try to pick this one up. You know what I mean? Try to get this. This is for those who, if you recall, they made a giant oversized Black Lotus. That thing started being worth stupid money. And that was completely taken for granted for 15 something years. So this is the exact type of, promo item that is cool and fun and you can use it, and have fun with it. But 10 years from now, you'll be thanking us. And that's the important part. Let's move on here. From Gather the Townsfolk to the Desperate of Ravens. What must we crow about this week? Fallout's not coming to Magic Online. The Fallout set is not coming to Magic Online at the moment. Now, that said, it took them 2 years, but Warhammer 40K did. So I don't think it's out of the question that it's coming to online, but it's not coming to Magic Online anytime soon. Which is a little unfortunate.
We've seen that with a few things at this point. And like you said, if there's enough demand, they may find a way to make it a thing in another year or two. But I don't know. It's one of those things I kind of gotten to the point I sort of expect some things just aren't going to show up on different clients.
Mhm.
for various reasons that we may or may not ever hear about. So I just kind of go, if it happens, it happens.
Yeah. I think that once the Triumph of St. Catherine won a major older format tournament, uh, they needed to put it on Magic Online. If the same thing occurs, if a card from Fallout makes its way into a vintage winning or legacy winning deck at Vintage or World Championships, we're going to see something similar. But until that happens and the need is there, it's probably not going to happen.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll see. And again, while it's nice to have as many cards as you can in the client. I'm also curious if this is one of those pulling away things, or if it's just they did the contract and no one said Magic Online at some point, and maybe they did with 40K later and they re-upped the contract or something. I don't know. Anyway, let's move on here to something that we went pretty in depth with in the pre-show, so we won't quite go as far. And a lot of these arguments that we've discussed have been brought up many times over the years. We're well versed in this conversation, but there was an article that was written recently by Reed Duke on TCG Player that was published on March 8th saying why you should care about competitive Magic and that it's not just for spikes and that more than spikes can get stuff out of it. And they note things like the fact that obviously Magic began very competitive focused, which was the thing, which was nice. Competitive play can impact card prices. For example, Vein Ripper is now a $20 card, where before it was, I don't know, like $5 or $6 or something, whatever it was before it exploded. And that's cool and that's nice, and also inspiring people. Like Shivam Bot likes to tell the story where a few innocuous limited tips revitalized his love for Magic when he was in a slump. And that was a stepping stone, and now he makes the Casual Magic podcast and makes a lot of content, and he's great. So there's no doubt, and clearly, at least among a few of us, I know between me and Ruben, we were born and bred in the PTQ circuit. Like, we were there at the FNMs, we were there with our friends on every weekend. We were grinding it out. We were all throwing ourselves into a car at 6 a.m. to try to get to the event, yada yada. And that's cool, and I think it's super rad. But we're also not necessarily business majors, and we're also not trying to run a $1 billion brand to make sure it earns $1 billion. And when you say how big of a component, how big of the budget slice should competitive Magic get, it used to get a pretty big slice, to the point where back in the day, Brian Kibler and friends were in Magic card packs. They were literally pro cards in packs, which is kind of insane these days. But at least Wizards does make a World Championship card. They do put the player's likeness on it and the player's name on it, which is cool, which is progress, honestly. But I also understand them being sort of gun shy after a while, between like the Mike Long stuff, and there being controversies with various pros over the years, that maybe if they step back a little bit, it'll be safer for the company. And then I think the ultimate pivot is when kind of not just the pandemic, but when the world sort of shut down and they tried the esports thing and it kind of fluttered, and then everything stopped, and then Magic kept growing. If anything, proved every single person in the C-suite at Hasbro and Wizards that we don't need to pay that much attention to competitive Magic because it's not important for the game to grow and continue.
Man, I'm gonna get to be the bad guy here. So I'm bracing myself for all the hate comments that are going to come from this. But okay, first let me say I genuinely do like Reed, probably the best pro player I've gotten to do commentary with. So
Great guy, yeah.
Nothing against him or his article.
Of course.
And I like what he's trying to argue for. But I think just we literally have over 30 years at this point. Well, we'll say competitively probably about 25 years worth of actual market research to show that like you just don't have to have a huge presence of professional play to move cards. Like right now on the market, we've got the four major players. If you want to say Magic, Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh, Lorcana.
Probably Lorcana at this point, yeah.
Yeah, they're not really shoving the pro stuff in your face. They don't need to. Right? That's not what moves cards. That's not what sells booster packs. It never has been. And Wizards, of all of them, tried for a long time. I mean, revamping the Pro Tour multiple times, revamping the Grand Prix circuit multiple times, doing stuff with nationals and different ways to qualify. And Like, and I went through all that. I was fortunate to get to play on the Pro Tour a couple of times. I got to play nationals once. So like I get it, but it's literally just a promotional tool at that point. It's to justify other purchases for people, to give cards value, to give importance to some things. But beyond that, it's not a driver. I mean, we were talking about it in the pre-show. Like I went to Pro Tours and people knew I was going, and that didn't move the needle for them. They just kind of asked, like, how'd you do when you got back? Like, that was it. Like, that's just how it is. Some people just it's not a thing for them. And I don't know if we will ever change that. I think it needs to still exist. I think it does still have a purpose, but there's probably just going to be a ceiling for the amount they're going to spend on it at this point.
This is the easiest red zone of my life. Um, I agree with a lot of what
Ooh,
you've said. I disagree with the conclusion that you've come to.
Sure.
So I think that I agree with a lot of the things that you say as it pertains to, for example, I don't think that a lot of attention needs to be paid to the Pro Tour. I don't think that everyone needs to be paid to pay attention to the Pro Tour. I disagree with a couple of things. The first thing I disagree with is that for something this was something similar to what you said, which was for 18 years we had a Pro Tour and we never needed it to drive product. And I disagree with that because we needed the Pro Tour at least for the first 2 years of it. Because
sure.
previous to that, cards were skyrocketing in price and the new cards weren't selling. And so the creation of Type 2 as a format required that you use the new cards. And in order to make Type 2 relevant, you needed a tournament scene.
Sure.
Home decaps.
But it's
So,
also that's all that existed in the beginning as well.
Right.
agreed. But the only tournaments that were there for a while were every card is legal, and those tournaments were dominated by cards that were printed in the first year and were hard to get. And the game was starting to flounder because people weren't buying the new cards. All they wanted were the old cards.
Right.
The creation of the competitive scene mandated that people continue to buy new cards. Right. So there is there is a purpose for the relevance of a standard like format. Another
Yes.
thing that this is going to be a tough sell to people who care more about shareholders than they do about consumers, but you dance with the one who brought you. Magic survived as not a fad and continued to be a self-sustaining economy
Mm-hmm.
because it purposefully delayed its success. It purposefully made it so that the cards in the first couple sets lowered slightly in value and weren't as ubiquitous in being required. It purposefully avoided being a bubble so that the balloon could stay filled 30 years.
They did a
And
good power,
com-
yeah,
and com-
clamping down on it.
and constructed competitive formats were a major reason why that happened. The last thing is more of a theoretical thing, and I think I'm not sure I've ever seen a Magic the Gathering rule book in like this big.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen the little ones that came in the tournament packs,
Yeah, like Ice
but
Age rules and stuff.
Oh yeah, they've
show
had
me the
different versions of rule
rules.
books. Yeah, because
Right.
they used to print them back in the day.
Oh, I know for sure.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that lots of judges or former judges out there have them. I've never seen one. But if you read the comprehensive rules to Magic, the rules to Commander are not in it. If you're a new person who's never played Magic and you don't have anyone to play Magic with and you want to learn Magic and you want to read the rule book, you're not going to learn Commander, you're going to learn competitive Magic. And pretty much the first thing you read is it's a two-player game where you start at 20 life and you're trying to get your opponent to zero. And
Sure.
trying to win the game is a good thing. I know that that's kind of somewhat controversial in some versions of games in general. I think that the goal in standard is to win, and the goal in commander is to have fun, and there's room for both, right?
Um,
So I think that for all of those reasons, I am on board with Reed's take. I think that there does need to be some amount of sustained support for competitive Magic. It doesn't need to be huge. It doesn't need to be the first, second, or third thought as it pertains to advertising and marketing. but you just need to put in the barest minimum effort to show, by the way, there are people who are the best in the world at the thing we make.
All
Just
Oh
right.
no,
so
I'm
you
on the
know.
same page with that. I think it still needs to exist, and I
Yeah,
think it does still have a purpose.
Right. I would know
for
that.
sure.
Thank you, Pharmacist Judge. Commander is subsection 903
Oh,
in the rules.
great.
And I can also see them adding that because it became really important to the
Yeah.
game. However, that aside, I think the most important part, I think, of what you noted there was that it did nothing existed back in the day. Like, it's hard to explain to everyone how new and weird Magic was in the 90s. No one had ever seen anything like it. There was no trading card game. There was baseball cards. That was the
Yeah.
only frame of reference that anybody had. Like, collecting play sets of things, that
Oh
didn't
yeah.
exist. That was
Right.
not that wasn't in people's heads. They just
It was
played.
sports cards and comic books.
Right.
That's what we had.
You just played with what you had. So, like, whatever you got was whatever you got to play with. You played giant stacks of cards, and everyone drew off the same deck, and all sorts of weird, stupid crap because no one knew that. So, having that structure to push people to play new stuff was important. And this is where you have the home decapped Pro Tours where you had to have 5 of each card, or at least 5 cards from each expansion. But whatever. And that worked out okay. And then they started having the other formats that extended, and then Type 1, and so on. And those were just like incredible building blocks. The reserve list, while like absolutely stupid today, was a pretty important, like very important part of Magic's history and at the time, and how people were freaking out over Chronicles and how it was destroying destroying the collections that people had made and blah, 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 like whatever. Obviously now we see that as a little silly, but at the time it was a big deal. So cool, it's great that it helped Magic figure out certain things and then subsequently help other games figure out sort of the same thing, which is you need to make your newer cards relevant as much as you can, and power creep's a little okay as long as you just you keep moving the pendulum around, which Wizards is really good at, and you keep pushing stuff back to the older formats that are way more powerful because you kept moving that pendulum around. But when we crossed that threshold into Commander is now the king, you continue crossing that threshold of saying, like, there's an argument that you take $200,000 and you have a bunch of celebrities show up and play Commander, and you make some cool videos out of that, and you wrap in the people who do the biggest Commander content or whatever on the web, and that's a better use of marketing dollars than an entire Pro Tour. I'm not saying I want that. I'm just trying to explain that those are the conversations that are had when you cannot draw the line between we had a Pro Tour, we sold better, we sold more, we impacted more. Like, it's really, really hard to do. And this is also sort of the way that, when SCG was at its prime, I mean, like almost every weekend an event. There were events in stores all over the East Coast, which was happening. Spending $15,000+ every weekend on that coverage, which was a thing. And the Grand Prix too, they were doing the same thing. At some point saying, because we remember this for the Grand Prix, which they said we're not doing coverage anymore, and that sucked. And it's just one of those things that just you're slowly just chopping away, not a lot, but a little, at sort of that experience of what you can do to experience the competitive Magic. And they lessened it and lessened it, and the ability to experience casual Magic got better and better and better. And if anything, has gotten more resources and more attention from Wizards, which is fine. That's cool. But all the things I heard about 5 to 7 years ago have just continued to come to fruition, which is competitive Magic is fine. They want something out there, but it's not going to be the focus, and it's not even going to be something that they continue to integrate with, like we talked about before, which is Arena doesn't have a lot of promotion for the Pro Tour. You don't go and pick winners. You don't get sleeves and stuff if somebody wins. I would love that stuff, and that would really help star build, but they don't. They've been pretty against star building versus starring the sets. They want the sets and the cards.
It's such a minimal effort
to be the stars.
to do stuff like that.
We know.
Sort of, but at the same time, how many of our pro players would we say are actual personalities we could build stars out of?
It's true.
I mean, 10, maybe?
Yeah.
Tops?
Versus how many of them are
and
not going to
again,
be people
this isn't
we
a
want to be
slight at
associated
them.
with.
Like, their skill is being good at Magic, not necessarily getting in front of a camera, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. But, I mean, we have Reed, we have Seth, LSV. There's a few, our Kibblers of the world or whatever.
Yep.
But not a lot, so all that effort, from their side didn't go anywhere because a lot of people aren't personalities. Like
But there's
Huey
other,
is a fantastic mind of the game, but Huey also is not a guy that wants to be
sure.
shaking hands and hobnobbing and rubbing elbows all the time, right? That's not his
But I don't
personality.
think that Huey is less of a sellable face than a lot of content creators,
Sure.
than a lot of people that do Commander as their main thing, or that are artists, or do other things that are in the public eye that are supported by Wizards.
I would argue that he's easier to sell to somebody who's already a competitive player.
Sure, but it's
Like
not.
Okay,
if
I buy
somebody's a
that. I
casual
buy that
player,
for
they're
sure.
not going to be as entertained by that. They're going to
For
want
sure.
somebody with flashy lights, funny jokes, whatever. Like that's what they're going for.
Right, and I think
And we've also pointed out before, I don't know if we can name a card game that came out of the gate saying, "Hey, we're going to be a pro level game. We're going to have $1 million in prizes, whatever," and had more than a 3 year run before they started to fall
Right.
off.
with that, I
Right?
mean, Battle Spirit
Yes.
Saga blew up so hard last year you could feel it in your bones, like
Hell, I
splat.
told you about the spoils. Like they invited me to come sit on this like RV they had, and they had this whole plan to do this like tournament series
Oh yeah,
nationwide
Super
tour
Spike
and
and
all this
sharks
stuff.
everywhere.
It was done in like a month after they started. Like the tour never went anywhere, right?
Sure.
So you can have all this money and all this backing for the pro level stuff, but at the end of the day, okay, cool, you got the spikes, but now what?
All right, so let's
Yeah.
go ahead and pivot here into something that could be just as red zoney, depending on how you feel about it. Is there was an article on Cardmarket that talks about insight into insight, farewells and new beginnings, which kind of boiled down to they appear to be getting rid of a lot of written coverage and or articles and or content, which I would personally disagree with. However, I think there's room for both of these things.
Sure.
If anything, I would note in terms of sort of marketing wise, text articles still provide a lot of good things. The magic of the SEO still exists, and the
Yep.
magic of search engines still want you to write things out and explain them. They can be in videos. You can have videos, and video content's great. But I pay for at CSI people to write words and people to make videos, and that's both. That's the thing you can do both at the same time. And and words honestly are cheaper than video. Like that's just them's brass tacks. But I don't think you necessarily want to throw out the baby with the bathwater or whatever. But I understand that there has absolutely been a downward trend of readability, of people going and checking out those articles versus watching those videos. And that's reality, unfortunately. As much as I love a tournament report and I love a high level thinking article, they're few and far between. So because we can toot our own horn, it's my own podcast, whatever. If you go to coolstuffinc.com, Michael Flores, who is a longtime fantastic writer who's done sort of all sorts of theory thinking, has a new theory about agency in Magic the Gathering. It's like 5,000 words. I'm very proud that we got to publish it. It's super interesting and neat. You should go check it out. But it's just the type of stuff that we don't get a lot of because it's rare for all the reasons that text has been sort of lessened over time on the internet.
Yeah, also a lot of people aren't as great of writers as some people we've had in the past too. Like
Agreed.
we have to call it what it is, right? We've
Yeah.
had writers in the past that had personality, were funny or were super insightful. I mean, you still have like your Frank Karstens of the world who can
Right.
break down any mathematical thing in the game and make it make
Right.
sense.
Right.
But not everybody has that level of skill, which also makes it difficult.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's Jeff Cunningham.
Yeah, not everybody's Mike Flores. And there was a time when someone mediocre like myself could write a weekly article and get paid for it. And that time is now past us. And now
Me
we
too.
are, yeah.
Dude, I feel
Huh?
like I need to apologize to the Magic
I
Committee
used to
because I
write an
got
article.
paid to write once upon a time and I sucked
Dude.
in the beginning.
I was so
Like-
bad that first
Like for
go
real.
through. It was painful. But people just wanted to read about Magic.
Right.
Dude,
And,
God bless
you know,
editors. That's all I'm saying. Or I wouldn't have made
and
it.
now it's kind of similar with video. We have a lot of video creators and a lot of video creators who are learning the space. They are either learning Magic or they're learning video or they're learning both. And
Right.
that's fine, but there is a lot of folks out there and it's very similar. So there's a lot of opportunity in video. It's a lot harder to search for video, as you said, with SEO. It's a lot harder to catalog video. It takes a lot less space to keep on your website. So there are a lot of things about text that are going to be better for the future going forward. Not everything,
Well,
but
you know,
some things.
and part of you know the change in behavior is that there is no more premium site. TCG Player had a premium
Right.
thing. SCG obviously had a premium thing for a long time, and that paid people's literal living wage and salary.
Hmm.
People could make good actual money. They could make money via prices every once in a while, but you know, paying the bills, paying your rent, a lot of SCG premium dollars paid a lot of rent and a lot of people's student loans and stuff like that for a very long time. And when that train ran out, a lot of things changed. So many got out of the game, so many stopped writing, so many stopped making content that it was tough to kind of keep going. And, you know, I miss the Jeff Cunninghams and the John Rizzos, but I also, you know, at this point just try to really appreciate what we are getting and the fact that Mark Rosewater continues to write and the fact that we do have the Flores of the world still writing, and I can directly sponsor that and fight for that, and I think that's cool. But you know, the other half of it is, you know, I have to look more on the SEO side of things than is this person going to blow my mind with a tournament report versus like, I really need you to write about, you know, elves in Commander right now. You know what I mean? Because it looks, there's charts and graphs that tell me you really needed to write about elves in Commander. And that just kind of is what it is these days.
Yeah, it's tough too because I think the landscape for creators has also changed, right? Now
Yep.
that there's all these monetization things on YouTube and on TikTok, and people are
Patreon.
finding ways. Yeah, exactly. And I think that moves a lot of that content as well too. So like,
Right.
yeah, they could deal with a website and work on somebody else's schedule to have a thing every week, or they can kind of just do their own thing and they're getting paid out here already. So, you know, the whole premium thing almost isn't motivation to even pay them anymore.
Yeah.
Well, you can imagine it like, you know, I wouldn't, these days, I wouldn't subscribe to a premium service. I would subscribe to Ruben's Patreon or whatever, of
Yeah,
him writing articles every week.
absolutely.
And there's people who still do that. Todd Anderson and Friends still does that for, I think, for Modern and Pioneer and stuff. And there's other creators who do it as well. And so, but that didn't exist. Like, to be clear, Patreon just did not exist when these things were happening. Patreon didn't exist in the early 2010s. And through that entire period, premium was
Oh,
awesome.
dude, 80% of the monetization for content creators wasn't out there
Oh,
at all.
absolutely. Yeah.
Like,
No,
so it's definitely a whole different landscape.
right. You couldn't join their channel on YouTube. You couldn't support them on Patreon, or there's certainly no OnlyFans or whatever back then. And so, yeah, that was a way that you could sort of funnel your dollars to the creators that you cared about. And now it's just different. Now you have those direct channels to those creators, and that changes things. And if anything has shown where people do want to pay for the stuff that they like, thank you patrons of the show, for example, you know, of like, they will directly support the things they want to keep happening, because if we didn't have the patrons we do, we would not be here regardless of our other sponsors. Thank you
Yeah.
so much. And you should check it out at patreon.com/magic mics. Either way, it's a whole thing, and it's how the market's changed, and I think
Yep.
it's interesting. Moving on here, last little bit here. UltraPRO has announced / released the Erasable Tokens. These are what you could
Oh,
argue.
I have words.
Oh, you could argue is a riff. Let's note here. I'm gonna bring it up here. So basically, saying that, you know, Infinite Tokens have existed for many years at this point. Infinite Tokens are dry erase cards that you can put, you know, whatever you want, name, power, and toughness, and so on. These are erasable tokens with dry erase fronts, but they are officially licensed. They have the actual magic art frames. They have magic colors. They have the power and toughness boxes and the type boxes already there, ready for you to scribble in where you need to, as well as some colorless ones. And there's been quite a bit of blowback of people saying that this was taking the Infinite Tokens idea from them, per se. Ultimate Guard also has kind of their own brand. You know, I think arguably you could say that dry erase cards have been around for a very long time. Infinite Tokens took that and commercialized it, and that these other companies are taking it and commercializing it. And if there was a patent on the Infinite Tokens, I would be the first right up front with the pitchforks and ready to go and just ready to fall down and know what, you know, die on the hill. But the fact that these are a iteration of an existing product is very common in business. And ultimately, I think that there is a giant difference when you are licensed versus you're not licensed, which you could say Ultimate Guard was a little bit more sort of infringing versus this product.
Mhm.
Sure. This for me, and I'm with you. Like it's not a patented thing. Anybody can make erasable stuff.
It's true.
But this kind of comes back to something we talked about before that if you wanted an easy PR win in the Magic community,
Mm-hmm.
like the owner, if anybody's met the owner of Infinite Token, she is the sweetest little lady. She's super friendly. She's always giving stuff away to people at events. Like she's a teacher, I believe, by trade, actually. So it's like so many reasons to like this person. Like you could have won easy points and just made a deal and market with her
Yeah.
and just say like, hey, why don't we turn Infinite Tokens into an official Magic product? Like everybody would have been all about it and celebrated it. Like that's an easy PR win for the community, right? Like with any type of bad press they've been getting or whatever, slam dunk win. Like this just kind of puts you in a spot where it's like, oh, okay, so it's like that. It's a money play and blah blah. And you're like, and I think they still would have made a bunch of money because she still sells a lot of Infinite Token stuff as it is.
Right.
You would sell more if they're branded, right?
They
So
would sell, I think, a lot more.
yeah,
Go ahead, Ruben.
No, you're good. It's just funny. I agree with everything you said. They're allowed to do this.
They are allowed, and for the cynic, the guy who's been around this so long, the guy who has seen some of the most popular people in Magic, have people at events have no idea who they are, and Magic's a very, very big ecosystem, and to sell these in stores and have them on the shelves. I think a lot of people have never even heard of Infinite Tokens. You got to be
sure.
you got to be pretty ingrained to have heard about them to start with, and again, we're talking.
And it's a great idea.
It is a wonderful idea, and that's what happens to great ideas if they're not patentable or copyrightable.
Right.
They will be iterated by
So
other companies.
coming to a store near you, get ready for Magic Mike's Erasable Tokens.
Heyo.
We're
Not-
joining the marketplace.
They're like Pringles, but not Pringles.
But not
They're like
Pringles.
Band-Aids, but not Band-Aids.
Yeah,
Uh,
like I said, I just think it's just you could have gotten an easy win.
Yeah.
That's all I'm saying.
You
Like,
could
yeah.
have tried to do that, yes, and then I recognize that something bottom line something.
yeah, I
Yeah, I
feel
get
you.
it.
I don't like it. We live in a capitalist society.
Exactly. That's my
Sorry.
stance is. Nobody
Sucks.
did anything
Yeah, vote
wrong
with your
in this
dollars.
scenario.
If you wanna, if you're like, man, this upsets me, then buy Infinite Tokens.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you're
Yep.
like, all right, I don't care, then buy the one that makes sense for you.
right, and
That's exactly it. Like nobody did anything legally wrong here.
right,
And
And
nobody
nobody
did
was-
anything
nobody was
morally
obligated to
wrong
anyone.
here
Exactly.
either.
yeah, I don't think morally wrong. We're in that
I don't
situation,
think
but
that there's anybody doing anything wrong. There's a little bit of like, why are we doing this when we could have this and goodwill? But
Yeah,
but
that's not a moral evil.
right.
but I'm with you though. If it bothers you, support the other person you want to support.
right.
I
Arguably,
think more people should do that more often. Like, when you're going to argue about something, at least support the things you do like and care about.
I mean, from what I can understand, these are fairly affordable. Like they're going to be available on the distributor level. They have the power of UltraPRO's printers. They have the power of the official license. Your local store is probably going to have some. If they don't sell, I promise it'll go away. Like it's very simple. I'm not trying to be dumb about it, but like for real, if y'all don't buy them, they won't have them for very long.
One
Yeah.
thing I will say though for UltraPRO is, man, they better work in a race well.
I mean,
Because if they don't, the blowback is going to be doubly stupid.
They better work. See, and that's going to be the ultimate test is, are they a superior product? Because it doesn't matter what you advertise. It doesn't matter how much people like your ownership. The
Right.
product that works better is going to survive.
Sure.
If they're both equally good, that's a whole nother kettle of fish.
There you go. All right, so I want to turn the corner here to the finisher. Longtime MTG readers will recognize the name Sol Malka, aka at Target Player on Twitter, the inventor of the green black rock archetype, who recently tweeted, quote, "Why is it called Jund and not alternative rock?" That got me thinking, what other Magic archetypes should be renamed after music genres, Ruben?
Well, the deck that's called Affinity, but has no affinity cards, or robots, but has no creatures with the type robot in the deck, or mono brown aggro, despite the fact that artifacts have been gray for 20 years. So why is artifact aggro not called heavy metal?
This guy. Right
Fair.
here. Power Dragon.
All right, so there's a popular commander deck that is effectively card flow control. It uses Seaborn Muse and Wilderness Reclamation in concert with Thrasios and another partner commander to make 4-color, mostly Simic extra turns and mana ramp strategy. But instead of Tymnia plus Thrasios, or even Thrasios plus Vial Smasher, why isn't that called Rhythm and Blues?
Wow. You got that rhythm. And that blue mana. I see what you did there. Now, when we go to Thunder Junction in a bit, we have the unique opportunity as a community to make sure that the green-based ramp deck that focuses on getting lots of lands into play for whatever reason ends up being called Country Western. We gotta bring it home.
We got both kinds of music
I need
here.
to name a deck that in the next format of Standard. I need to do that.
Country and Western, for sure.
Yeah. I am so proud of all three of these stupid punchlines. You guys, when I was writing these, I was like, man, these are some of the dumbest jokes I've ever written.
Please praise Ruben. He needs it. Thank
you. I need you to boost my ego.
Thank you, HK Andrew, for the 200 bits. Thank you so much for Chef the MMD for subscribing. You guys are wonderful.
Thanks, guys.
The comedian came through. He rocked us once again. Amadeus.
That's right.
Man, we're gonna have to hang around the stream longer. There's a hype train going on.
Tell you what.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Very cool.
Oh, well, let's stick around for a minute then.
Appreciate
We got
that.
5 more minutes to kill.
I mean, we can
on
stick
the hype
around
train.
for a few if we would like. That'd be fine.
Sure. Well, we'll wait for the hype train to run out.
Well,
I'm
we
okay
can
with
wrap
that.
up the show and then we'll just hang out with the viewers. How about that?
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's it. Well, that ends another live episode of Magic Mike's. Thanks for joining us here to discuss all things Magic. Thank you, Power Dragon.
Hey, it's always good to be here, and I got to be a good guy and a bad guy in this one, so this was a good week.
There you go. Thank you, Ruben.
Right. But remember, in Thunder Junction, there's only villains. There's no good guys.
There's a little law.
I'll believe it when I see it.
I'll believe it soon. We're going to move here to our final slide. I want to thank our sponsor, CoolStuffInc.com, our co-sponsor, Mana Traders, my co-host, Power Dragon, and Ruben Bressler. You guys for watching and listening. I hope you support us at patreon.com/magicmics. Please follow, like, tweet, favorite, share, subscribe to everything social that tells people we exist. Catch us on our exclusive member Discord, live on twitch.tv at Magic Mics, live or taped on our YouTube. Follow us on Twitter at Magic Mics Cast, and join our TikTok at Magic Mics Cast, or join us here next week, same time, same place, for another episode of Magic Mics. Good night, everybody.